So on the lighter side of AI voices, let's talk about using AI voices for entertainment, creatively, for art. Because for me, that is primarily how I've been using them, because I'm not really in the business of scamming people at this stage of my life. But
I also do not fully, really, in real life, scam people, just for the record.
Yeah, well, Perry, you found the loophole where you get to do it for fun and profit, right?
Right. Right, and not go to jail.
Exactly. Primarily, what I've found use for these AI tools has been in voice acting. Like we've used them in the show for dramatizations. I think we only used it for like one or two of the whispers from the static, but you've heard AI voices here. Obviously, Suno loaded up with AI voices. Getting AI voice to act is very interesting. I'm going to share a little video with you of Hank Azaria. It's a video from the New York Times called "Can AI Voice the Simpsons?" And they brought Hank Azaria into a studio, had him record some lines, and then use text-to-speech on Elevenlabs, similar to what we were doing earlier in the show, to see if it could recreate Simpsons characters' voices. So I'll just give you a little taste of that, and then we're going to do the same thing.
Hey there, this is Mo, the bartender, speaking to you. How would I describe my clientele? Sleazebags, scumballs, jerkwads.
To be clear, this right now is Hank Azaria speaking into it, doing the voice clone, not the AI yet. This is him training it.
Urans, all of them apply.
And then they're going through, running the generations
Mo,
now.
the bartender. You should come to my pub sometimes and have a duff.
That was way off.
It doesn't have enough gravel in it. And it's missing a lot of sounds that Mo should make. It's not here, it's here.
If we were trying to sound like a robot, that would be a pretty good version of what we were trying to do.
So they found it underwhelming. You should watch the entire video. We'll, of course, link it in the show notes video description. And it wasn't really an impressive output, but it doesn't really look to me like they tried that hard.
Yeah, I don't think they tried. It looked like they brought him in, he recorded a little bit, and then they were just going with whatever the first generation was and not really experimenting with the sliders for stability or anything else that like we talked about before.
Yeah, and I have not dug into it to know for sure, but that's certainly what it seems like. I don't think that it could really faithfully recreate Mo's voice with all of its nuance.
No.
But I wanted to give this a whack as someone who does voice acting and character voices in particular. So I took a character voice that I've had in the bank for a while, which didn't start out this way, but is ultimately ended up becoming a parody of Bentley from Sly Cooper. I'll try and break off a piece of it now. I pre-trained this right before the episode using about a minute. So I did 2 30-second recordings. But the character's voice sounds like this. This is the voice that I fed into it. And I just read a bunch of different lines. At first, I was reading Errantly by J.R.R. Tolkien, but that's a really hard one to wrap your mouth around. But I wanted to feed it a voice like that I think doesn't sound like me very much.
How much does that hurt?
Oh, not at all. If you do it right. If you do it wrong, it hurts pretty bad. But also, just for flavor, for a reference, this is the character that I think I ended up sounding a lot like. This is Bentley from Sly Cooper.
Well, this just doesn't make any sense. Place the conversion cube's blue gamma rod into the hex port 5.
Sounds just like him.
Into the hex port 5. Yeah, it's close, right?
Yeah, you might be facing a lawsuit after this.
Yeah, well, we'll see. So I did that. I created what I called this voice Turtle Guy over here in Elevenlabs AI. And so, yeah, I read a bunch of stuff in that character voice. And this is what I was able to get out of it. This is me pushing the style exaggeration all the way up to like 86% and things like that. But here's what I got, and I'm actually impressed.
Hey, oh wow. This is a demonstration of what happens when you feed a pretty extreme character voice into Elevenlabs.
So it doesn't hit the original mark, for sure. Because that voice has a bit of a different sort of like bounciness, and there's a lot of grit and grime that isn't coming through. But it's pretty good as far as like creating an AI voice character goes.
Yeah.
You can push these things. And I have found throughout working with different AI voice changers and stuff that the harder you really push the input. So like if I try to amp that voice to its extreme and train this, I think I might get a better generation because it's like it knocks 50% off of the emotiveness of the voice right off the bat. So if you give it 200%, you might get close to a character voice.
It almost feels like it's been overly compressed, right? Like the dynamic range has been squished between these two parameters, where it's like it can only go down so far, it can only go up so far. It's like they've artificially varnished it.
I feel like it's not necessarily in the levels, but in like the timbres it's allowed to access and like how much it's allowed to vary.
Yeah, exactly. That's the way I'm thinking. Like the vocal variance has been like pushed between an artificial low and an artificial high. That's not really where you'd want that character to be.
Completely. And actually, in the spirit of that, I'm going to just try. I have never run one of these at 100% exaggeration. Let's see if that gets, let's see what that gets us. Might be nothing.
Hey, oh wow. This is a demonstration of what happens when you feed a pretty extreme character voice into Elevenlabs.
So that's that. For reference, here's how I would read that in that voice.
Hey, oh wow. This is a demonstration of what happens when you feed a pretty extreme character voice into Elevenlabs.
So like there's, that wasn't even like my best read if I was cutting this, but like just for example, there's just a lot more depth to what a person can do than what an AI can do. The real power of AI voice changers and AI voice generators, in my opinion, is when you get into voice-to-voice, speech-to-speech.
Yeah.
Which is where instead of feeding it text as an input, you feed it audio as an input and it mimics it. For example, here's just a little bit of what I was working on from a PSA. I'll play for you the final output that I ended up using first. So this was, in context, a fake scam phone call of like someone's daughter in a car crash calling their parent to try and scam them out of money. Like that's the setup. Here's the audio I ended up using.
Dad, it's me. I've been in an accident and I need help.
But this is what it was working off of. Dad, it's me. I've been in an accident and I need help. And then just one more time back to the AI.
Dad, it's me. I've been in an accident and I need help.
And so you can see like my read that went into it was a lot more desperate and perhaps almost cartoonishly desperate because that I think was my third take. I was slowly escalating how extreme I was leaning into the emotions until I could get the AI to hit close enough.
Right. It still sounds a little bit flat for a real situation, but we were able to fix that by having a sound bed, right? Because the sound bed can add emotion and it can add momentum to a voice. And I think that's how we were able to solve for that part of the problem. But the thing that really comes out in these, and I think from a creative use perspective, one of the other things we didn't touch on is, imagine you've got 99% of a good take and you can't get that character actor back in. You could do a clone of their voice with their permission, of course, and then you can re-roll the few lines that they flubbed or that just needed to be a little bit tighter, and then you might be able to get those in a usable space to add in to spare that person the expense or the trouble of coming back in. So I think that's one really good use. The other thing on voice to voice that can increase believability quite a bit is adding those little ums and stammers like you were doing.
100%.
That's really hard to do in text to speech. The other thing you can add is like laughs and sniffs and coughs. Like if you had a shuddering breath and a sniff, nobody thinks about that being on a computer.
I think that the takeaway I have from playing with these tools is that anyone who thinks that you can just like use AI to generate a good thing without having like no barrier to entry, no production skills, no work, that's kind of a fool's errand, and you're not going to like, that's just not really going to happen. Maybe I might eat my words in a couple of years when things get really crazy, who knows? But it's something that can be used creatively, I think, best by indie artists and small artist teams. It's not something that big studios could really embrace as a cost-saving measure and still maintain quality. Whether they will and not maintain quality remains to be seen. But it is,
Yeah.
And it can enhance what you can do. It can make you able to voice voices that just physically you wouldn't be able to make, which is a good thing if that's, done for fun. But I think, Perry, we're going to dive into some...
Yeah, we're going to take a darker turn in the last one. We're talking about how we can weaponize this stuff. So I already hinted at some of that by showing how to defeat the detectors that are there, but we're going to talk about fully weaponized versions of these.